Hi, we're Lisa and Angie. Welcome to another episode of Pep Talks and Prosecco.
If you like what you see and hear, be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram and share with your friends and family. We are all about building community.
Cheers!
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 Cheers, everyone! Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
Good. It's so nice that we get to do some of these episodes together now.
So fun.
Yeah, wonderful. We're so happy. You can tell. We're
Yeah.
always happy though, I think. So today we have a pretty interesting topic and something that you and I have been tossing around for quite a while about doing an episode on. And it's really about facing your critics.
Yes.
What was really interesting is when we started to have more conversation about what the episode could look like, my interpretation around critic and your interpretation were a little bit different. So we're actually going to have two different spins on facing and dealing with your critics today. So Lisa, why don't you kick things off with how you perceive and how you work through dealing and managing your critics?
Absolutely. So when I was thinking about critics, I know in my own life, the critic that has the loudest voice for me is actually my own self-talk. I will catch myself judging myself or calling out my mistakes, telling myself that I'm not good enough. And I have to work at silencing that inner critic. And I actually call her Felicia. And I started calling my inner critic Felicia after reading Mel Robbins' book, The 5-Second Rule. And Felicia likes to sneak in, especially when something great happens in my life, or not always, but sometimes if I'm unsure or not feeling confident, she starts that you're not good enough, judging my mistakes and that sort of a thing. So for me, that critic is that inner voice. And of course, we do have people in our lives sometimes who, especially when you're putting yourself out there, who may, make negative comments or passive aggressive comments. And I don't really consider them critics. I just consider them people who need to do a little bit more work on loving themselves. But yeah, for me, when I was thinking about how we deal with critics, I was definitely thinking about Felicia and how she likes to try to knock me down a few notches every once in a while. And what was your take on it? I really thought your take on it was quite interesting.
So for me, I firmly believe that we all need to have critics. And I think it's really important that I define what my interpretation of having a critic is. And a critic isn't the gossipers.
No.
That's a whole nother segment that we could be doing. We're not going to spend time on today. I'm talking about people who are knowledgeable about your skills, people that are knowledgeable about your goals, but they provide, I would guess, some constructive feedback in that setting. And I firmly believe that if you only surround yourself with people that are like-minded, that are only going to cheer you on and never provide any feedback or constructive criticism for you, then you're really doing yourself a disservice.
Yes.
Because the only way you're going to rise up and level up is if you have some really helpful background chatter. And so I consider those people my critics, and I consider them essential. And I'll tell a quick story of how you've been a critic for me before. And me using this definition, I know that you don't take that as something that's offensive,
no,
right?
For sure not.
But we were about to head into doing a guest interview, and I was in a funk, and I was anxious about something, and I really hadn't identified or labeled what it was, but my emotions were, I was grouchy, let's just be honest. And Lisa just said to me, she goes, snap out of it. Like, we need to go into this. So whatever you're dealing with right now, you need to do a readjustment, and you need to snap out of it. And if she wasn't a critic from my definition, she wouldn't have said anything. She likely would have been passive about it. And I would have continued potentially going forward with that state of mind. What her criticism allowed me to do was to reflect, to readjust, and get myself in a place so I can be better for the next steps or for what we were about to embark on. So that's why I am a big advocate of you need to have critics.
We need people
Yep.
in our life who are going to help us grow, because if we stay in that comfort zone for too long, we never grow. And so I love that. I hadn't thought about it in that way until we started having these conversations, but I think it's so important that we surround ourselves with people who are going to cheer us on, but also call us out when we need to check ourselves. Just like I tell Felicia to buzz off, our friends need to tell us, you need to make that way of thinking, or what you're doing right now is way too detrimental to you and your health.
Yeah.
Stop it. Let's move on. So yeah, I just thought that was such an interesting take. And I actually was going to share with you, and I think I've told you this before. One time I had told my husband or verbalized something that Felicia was telling me, and I shared that verbalization with my husband, and he actually said to me, "Here's the thing, Lisa, people don't think about you as much as you think they do." And I was like, what? But he's right. He's absolutely right. We make up these stories in our minds all the time about what we think other people are thinking, or, how they're perceiving us. And quite frankly, it's probably not true. We're just making that up. So it's, it was kind of funny when he said that to me. And then, he kind of followed it up by saying, so what if they think that? Mm-hmm. And so I think that comes back to that opportunity to grow then. If people are making comments that you don't love, what about them might be true? And get rid of the stuff that isn't, and focus on where are some areas that we might be able to improve. So critics can be your friend.
I love it. So here's to Felicia and here's to critics. Cheers.
Cheers.